Recording with Miss Kim. And it's been so long, I forget how to say your last name. Witczak?
Witczak.
Witczak, beautiful. Thursday, April 20th, 2023 at 5:38 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to support the podcast, click the little red button. That's locals, or go to the description, buy the merch. Also support the podcast. Let me look it up right now. When was the last time we spoke, or when was the last podcast we did? Episode 591. And this is episode 1193. So what is
Wow.
that?
It's
Six,
almost 600
602. 602
ago.
episodes later. And it was, I don't know, Rumble doesn't give you the exact date. It says 1 year ago, which means it's probably a couple days away from like 2 years ago. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago we did that and talked about the FDA and how evil everyone there is. And I suppose nothing's really changed. And yeah, as I was just telling you, this is all I do. The show better be improving because this is all I do. If it's not noticeably improving, then I am doing nothing correct. But I think it is slowly but surely. But Miss
Amazing.
Witczak, can you please introduce yourself? Because I've done more than half of the total episodes since we last spoke.
I
So
know I was going to say you probably have done almost one a day since we last spoke.
more than that. I did 385 last year.
Okay.
I think I did like 370 the year before. So
All
a
right.
little over
So,
one a day.
all right. Well, that's very impressive. Well, I remember when we first spoke, it was shortly after the December 20th, 2020 FDA Advisory Committee. And I think Peter McCullough introduced
Mm-hmm.
me to you and said, "Oh, you got to talk to her." And so I just remember we had a really great conversation. We talked about a lot of things and a lot of things, related to FDA, what I've done, but also life.
Yeah.
And it seems like all this stuff that, was going on then is still going on.
Yeah.
And it's been going on for years and it's going to continue to go on
Gonna go
until we
forever.
actually until we actually say enough's enough and, you know, and figure out a new system because this one is not working.
No. No, it's kind of the nothing new under the sun. Like, I don't know, you can go read like a book for I just in January I read what is it? The Jungle by Upton Sinclair about like the
Mm-hmm.
meatpacking district in Chicago. And I think it was written in like 1904.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that was one of our, like my high school books, or maybe it was college econ class that we had
I'd
to go read
always
that.
I always remember hearing the name and it talked about
Mm-hmm.
how pivotal the book was. And I finally decided to read it. And it really is one of the best books I've ever read. I mean,
It's intense.
it's
It's an intense
incredible.
book, right?
And but when you read it, it is kind of I mean, I don't know if it's funny because, some of the things are so sad, but it's interesting. It's at least you can't not have like a chuckle when they're having the same discussions about just everything. Now, granted, it's the horse and buggy industry and not the car industry, and they're talking about the Telegram instead of like your iPhone. But for the most part, it is all the same things. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple people at the top and they don't care about anybody's health, and they're lying to you and putting things in there, and if something happens, they're legally protected, and all the politicians are bought up by the corporations, and you're reading it and you're like, this could be 2023. It could
Mm-hmm.
also probably be like 1780. And it's
Right.
just so I don't know if there's comfort in that or depression, or there is a little comfort in knowing that, and this sounds probably like compromise, like a abused wife somehow like compromising their own insanity or the own an
Like the
insane
excuse.
yeah, that's sort of, and it's very sad, like a victim
Yeah.
thing. But there is almost some comfort in realizing that it's always been fucked.
Yeah.
Like, it's very dark and depressing when you're like, why would they push this vaccine? And there's no trials and it's clearly injuring people. And you're like, I can't believe these institutions we look up to are so corrupted and just full of dog shit. And that's bad. But there is something, it's like when it's not that you realize Santa isn't real. It's not that Santa stopped being real. You realize Santa never was there, and you
Right,
were fine anyway.
right. Oh, that's actually a good way of looking at it, where you start looking
You
back
realize
and you're
like
like,
it's not that they've become corrupted.
no, it's the illusion of,
It's and not just in my life. I mean, my parents' life, my grandparents' life. I think my great grandma was born in 1902. So, and then even then, they're in in the jungle. They're following like a 40-year-old guy. So like, it's always just been. It's just like a lead pipe full of horse shit. You realizing the water's never been cleaned,
mhm.
and it's still gross. But it's not that you just realize the water's gross. You're like, oh, I've been drinking it for 32 years, and I mean, for the most part, I'm fine. So there is
Yeah,
some
but
teeth
I
in there.
wonder, so I'm going to say that is because you read that book. So you're like, oh yeah, I can see it and I see the connect the dots,
Okay.
right? Of like, oh, it's always kind of been there. But I think there are a lot of people that truly are waking up now to what they thought was the big institutions or the regulatory agencies that were protecting us, the little guys,
Yeah.
the little people. I think there are people who literally, especially in the COVID era and all of the products with the FDA and the doctor, like the whole system is built on like trust. And then once like trust has been taken away, or like you said, Santa, and you realize, oh my God, Santa's not real. And then you realize, okay, all right. Then you start going back and looking, and you're like, but how did I ever believe this?
Hmm.
And why did I ever believe this? But because you're a little kid. So it's kind of that same thing. You're inherently trusting. We inherently trust the doctors, and the doctors inherently like, but if you think about it and you go back to some of those books that you read, and that was a long time ago that I read that like in econ class. And I remember because it was all part of the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about, and right now we're going through the fourth industrial revolution. We did an ad campaign for one of our clients, and we actually used footage from the first, when it was like the steam engines, and you see how far we've come. But it's just that was their era, which is the equivalent of our era, but
Yeah.
it's even more magnified because technology, and then like now it's out of control with the AI and the chat GP and then GPT, and then you're like, who is actually who's like, is there a mastermind? Like, who's the mastermind? Who's
Uh,
behind the like curtains? Who's playing?
no, let's get into that. I was gonna a real quick comment and like it's like a flow chart. There's like a couple things you can there's like a couple realizations you can have, and then you have like it's almost like choose your ending of the book. You can go, it's always been screwed, and then you dig a little deeper and you go, oh, that's scary, but at the other side of the darkness is relief, and you go, it's always been fucked, and
Yeah.
I'm fine. And then I'm like, I'm in an apartment building that was built in 1969. I'm on the fifth floor. There's 10 floors above me, five below me. Yeah, this thing probably isn't up to code. And it's probably
Yeah.
never been up to code. And then there's
Hmm.
just some you go, it'll probably be fine.
It'll
It
probably
survived.
be.
It
Yep.
survived 50 winners anyway. It'll probably survive another 50. And you're just like, and that's okay. And so that's one realization you can have. And that's the best realization you can have. And it's not a coincidence that the best realization is also the hardest. You got to go through, it's if you want the abs, you got to work out at the whole, of course, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
The other one you can have is complete freak out. Everything's fucked. I'm never driving under a bridge again because it's probably not up to code. I'm never getting on a plane again. I am going to boil every drop of water I drink. I am going to hide inside my room with a locked door and a shotgun. That if that person and that realization, not realization number two, just goes a little further, they can reach the bliss of realization one of, and it's okay. You're gonna die.
Hmm. Yep.
And then there's the third option, and it's dissociation, head in the sand. I don't care. And you just detach from reality. Like when people get
Hmm.
like an arm bitten off by a shark, they go, I didn't even feel it. I just looked at it and they're like, I felt like I was in a dream. They're like, I like said hello to the shark, and then like passed out. Like
Right.
that's
Right.
the third option, is just your brain goes, that's too much.
I'm
It,
out. I'm checking out.
it
I'm gonna pretend like
doesn't even turn off the computer, it just rips out the plug and goes, good night.
yeah,
And like
totally.
that's yeah. So I just want to get those thoughts out. But then yeah, so who's behind it all?
Yeah,
Right.
or like to your point of like the three different ways, choose your ending, that also kind of goes to the type of people we are, right?
Yeah.
Or I mean, I do believe, like I remember when this first was happening and I was having a conversation with some, really like critical thinking, healthy skeptic people I've worked in within the advocacy world. And yet there are a lot of those that I've also worked with who during the last 3 years completely lost all of that critical thinking, or like all of a sudden thought Pfizer and these companies were doing good for society, and they lost almost. And so then I'm super intrigued, like is it fear, like who? And I
Yeah.
think the last couple years, so going back to the person we were just talking about it, I'm like, do you ever feel like we're like, I go, maybe the best way to look at all of this is, what if you were in a Hollywood movie and you got to play the director or the screenwriter, and you got to like figure out the ending, because that's what it's kind of felt like that we've lived
Yeah.
in one hand. But then I also think about the people who, it almost seems like your relation to, whether it's reality, whether it's fear, whether it's like this idea of accepting what is, right? Like you just said, it's always been this way. All right. And then that's kind of your relationship to it, right? The whole whatever, that we've gone through. Or is it like fear, and it's because you have like this expectation of what it's going to be, and so then that brings you down another ending, versus yeah, versus accepting what is and whatnot. So I know that gets in
No,
my little like
no. I'm starting to think now the three possible outcomes. They're actually kind of all this. They're not three. It's actually one path, and there are three stages of the path. The
mm-hmm.
first is, and each one you can stop at and pause there, and then that becomes your reality. The
Yep.
first is dissociation. It can, just flatline, divide by zero. No, I'm not addressing that. It's too
Right.
evil.
And then you stay there, and
Yeah,
you can live
yeah,
there.
and you can live there forever, or you can briefly go through that and then go, okay, and then you go to stage two, and the stage two is anxiety of, oh my god, it's all ruined, it's all, and you can stay there, and you can never go back to the first one though. But if you keep going through the anxiety one, the Winston Churchill, if you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking, because you'll get out.
Yep.
The third stage is then, oh, it's all always been hell, and that's fine. And so there's only one outcome. It's just how
Mm-hmm.
far are you willing to go? And
Mm-hmm.
then now that I'm thinking about it though, it almost seems like there's a fourth outcome. If you go farther down the road,
Can
you
you
go, it's
fix it?
always been screwed. Back to the meat packing houses 15 years before World War One, all the way to now where, we're landing rovers on Mars and it's still all fucked. But then you go, wait, how can it be fucked? Because even when you're reading The Jungle about, and you're going, oh, we have all the same problems of corruption and wealth aggregation for an elite 0.1%. You're also listening to their working conditions and how there's like kids selling newspapers when they're like 4, and how like the sister or the daughter has to start like whoring herself out at 12. And you hear those and you go, yeah, no, that's, thank God we've progressed from there. And then you go, wait, so
Yeah.
it's all fucked, but it's also not, because we've clearly progressed.
Right.
You go, the
So you
fact that
get
they
a
have this,
little bit further.
so you go, it's actually, and then you go full circle. You go, it's actually not all fucked.
Yep.
It's because clearly, like, you're listening to the Jungle on like an audiobook, and it's like every day you have to go stand in the snow for 3 hours, and then you go work in there, and you like hopefully you don't have your hand chopped off, and you have to like urinate while you're standing on the line, and you're going, oh my god, you're like, that wouldn't stand, that would be like viral news. And then you go, oh, so we've clearly moved forward because that wouldn't stand.
Right.
So now you're all the way back at stage zero. of
Right. Of a
thinking everything,
new,
of
of a
thinking
new
everything's
one.
of a new one.
Right.
And then what, does that just repeat forever?
Maybe. So I keep looking, thinking, I mean, it is a really good thing because I think about like what is going on right now. Like, are we going to, or my nieces that are younger, are they going to look back, you know, and what will they remember? Because, you know, some of them were like in high school and junior high, in college, like everything from their growing up years and the pivotal years were some of the best times in my life, you know, when I
Hmm.
look back, and, you know, those times were really, you know, fun and treasured. What will their looking back, will they see this and say, never again? Is it going to be people like you and I and all the people who are saying never again? You know, kind of like the same people who stood in line at the meatpacking and, you know, were waiting outside for 3 hours. You know, the little kids selling newspaper, like somebody had to say never again.
Hmm.
So there is that evolution that comes from it, as long as there's the realization and that you don't stop at these places. Because I feel like right now, when I look at, even I think people are so, you know, I love reading comments. Like I always tell people it's one of the best and the worst things to do, reading comments, if it's not about like, what are they saying about you? Because people are going to say stuff all the time because they're not in the arena. I don't care about those, but I'm more interested in comments because it puts the pulse on society and how they're thinking, right? So you start reading comments about things, and there are a lot of people right now that are like, I'm done, we're moving on. They don't want to talk about it. So they don't even think about, how do I want to fix this? What's happened in the last couple of years. They're just like, I don't want to talk about it, and almost living oblivious and wanting to just, they're kind of in that phase one of like, disassociated, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm
COVID's
good. Like,
over, dude. Drop
no,
it.
it's
COVID's
over.
over.
Oh, it's over. Why do you want to keep talking about it? Like, I want to move on. I'm like, yeah, you don't think I want to move on? But like, no, you can't move on without understanding what just happened and doing something so it doesn't happen again. Or that we have smarter questions, or we're willing to push back. Or, you know, I think, you know, when you look at, again, going back to the jungle, that was very much like the meatpacking, the manufacturing,
Hmm.
all of that. This is more the healthcare, right? The health
Yeah.
and sovereignty of people and what goes in people's bodies. But it
Still the same. It's
still
the
the same.
mechanized advancement of
Yeah,
human
it's just,
life.
right. And using the fear, which is what we've done, and everybody knows, like, fear is a powerful motivator. You know, I was thinking there should be a study that somebody does that's kind of a qualitative study that looks at what were the factors, like what was it that was the fear? Was it the, you know, I keep thinking, do you remember how almost every day in the beginning we had the ticker tape on the bottom of every computer, every like TV saying how many deaths, and it was like
400,000 cases of
and it was like,
coronavirus.
yeah, it was
Delta,
the viruses.
Omicron, Sigma Chi. You're gonna
Yeah,
fucking die tomorrow.
yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It almost felt like, whoa. And then you had like you know, the midday, Governor Cuomo coming up and doing all of his like updates, and everybody's like, now that's a leader. We
That's a,
want him to be our next president, until the scandal happened. You
yeah.
know, I mean, then you start like watching it. So like, it is really fascinating to say what happened and what was the
I don't
media
I don't think any of
environment.
it, I don't think it's an accident.
It's not accident. It's, you know, coming from my background, not my drug safety work, my advertising and marketing. You know, I could see this because what you do in marketing and advertising and communications, it's all about crafting a story.
Yeah.
It's about selling hope and fear, and, you know, and it's getting into the human psyche, like what motivates somebody. Death, you know, like for a lot of people, like for me, you know, obviously I don't want to die anytime soon, but I also have a pretty comfortable if I do, I've lived a great life. That's
Yeah.
all I'm going to say. If I did, my time, because I have a spiritual kind of perspective on things, and I don't know, and maybe partly because of what happened with Woody. I
Hmm.
also, with my husband, that I don't know, he's dead, and I don't know, like, I don't know, but it is interesting that they were able to tap into something so, like, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing, where they knew, it was the machine. So it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, like, who's behind the curtain? Like, who was the mastermind? Like, all the pieces that had to be in place, because that was a huge one. And then, now I just saw today something with all the Wuhan that came out, and, that it was gain of function, which we all, of course, but,
Yeah.
the Senate report or whatever report, it just came out, and how there's lies. I mean, but in the beginning, we didn't necessarily know, or maybe you you did, maybe you're like, you were thinking something doesn't make
Well,
sense.
so when you go into comments, no, there is an importance of going into comments because you get the pulse. You then have to realize that if you and I have had that realization, I don't think I'm stupid, but I'm also very certain I'm not the smartest person in the world, which thus implies there are smarter people. So any realization I have, someone else has had before me. And that's where you get bots and artificial comments. So you can give off an artificial pulse. So you might have 10 people comment and say, this episode's great. Well, if you want to craft a narrative, all you got to do is get 90 people. Because if you shadow ban or censor the 10 people, they're going to make a big fuss. So what
Right.
you do is you let those comments fly. And instead, you just drown it out with 90 more comments of bots, that's software that requires nothing. And you just say this episode sucks, or you know what, I forget about COVID. Like, you have no idea who's behind that. You have absolutely
Yeah,
no idea who's behind that. You don't know if that's a real
you're right. I
person.
mean, with that, you're right with the whole, we're adding
You
a
get a
whole different
pulse.
element.
Yeah,
Yep.
you look at the comments and you go, it's like when you go on Reddit, and Reddit's cancer, and I don't go on Reddit, but if you go on Reddit and you go look at like the most upvoted thing on the front page will be like 100,000 upvotes. So it implies that an entire stadium of people liked it. Fauci says, I don't regret nothing because I did the right thing. And you go, 100,000 people like that. So therefore, that is the thing. And you go into the comments, and the top comment, it's like, I stand with Fauci. And you're like, everyone stands. You have no idea if that's a genuine 100,000 people or if that's 4 bots.
Yeah, a
You have
hundred.
no
Yes, you
idea.
know what? That is very true. I didn't,
So
when I
that
was
skews the whole
saying,
thing.
yeah, 100%. So I'm going back more like, you are absolutely right when you look at sheer numbers and how we have a whole different thing to work about, like, think about
Well,
now.
you can get the pulse if you go look at comments of people that you know are real. Like, I went to middle school with him. Like, I know that
Yes.
that's my cousin. That's my dad. And even just
Yeah.
your own sampling, you go 18 out of 20 people have this feeling from all walks of life, all races, all sexes, all political leanings. And you go, okay, so you can also cut through the bot bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I mean, that's the whole element that really has made things a lot more difficult, as well as, I think back, and I always say this, that had the environment that we live in today, of censoring, of the bots, the banning, like all of that, had that existed when we were trying to get the black box suicide warnings on, I guarantee you it would never have worked, because we already had our versions of being censored, gaslit, and we didn't, the bots didn't really, I mean, maybe they did, I don't know, like 20, 18, 20 years ago, I'm not sure they did, nothing like they did today. So you actually had mean people, like, you would have to go on to mainstream, websites, because social media didn't even
Well,
exist, right?
and that's the thing, is you have to realize they co-evolve. So it's like there weren't bots, but there was also, so 20 years ago is April 2003. So
Yeah.
let's look at almost perfectly what was another huge psyop going on. We've got to go into Iraq and get the WMDs because fucking somehow Saddam's related to 9/11, and if you denounce that, you're a treasonous pacifist,
Uh,
right? No
yeah,
different than you're killing grandma. You
yeah,
you didn't have bots, but you didn't need bots because there was no Facebook. So instead, you just had to control CNN, Fox, MSNBC,
exactly. You had a
whatever.
smaller market, and
So
even
they co-evolve.
yeah, so it is. It's just because it did exist. So it just was on a much smaller scale. So even like I think about with getting those warnings and how many names, like that's why when this whole thing happened and everybody being called like anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists, I'm like, I've already been down that path. I was called an Scientologist
Mm-hmm.
because anybody who criticized any of the psych medicines, you were automatically a Scientologist. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense because if I
No.
was, we would never have taken the drug. But nice try.
Yeah.
Or they'd be like, you're anti-drug, you're, whatever. I'm like, no, no. But you only, and I had to work really, really, really hard to get that other kind of story put into like the CNN, the Fox. It was the big networks, or, I mean, even at that point, it wasn't even the big networks. You had cable and you had split off cable. And so you had all the networks there, but it was a little easier. And it would just be, like you'd maybe read some of those comments, but they weren't like bots saying, there would be real people saying, you're a this, you're a that, whatever. But yeah, when you look back, you're so right. Like what was happening in April of 2003, what had just happened, 9/11, right? A couple, I look back, it's funny, the 9/11, I just, I think, where was I? But then now looking and all the stuff that has evolved and come out of it, I wonder if in 20 years, whoever is the Tommy and the Kim doing the Tommy Kim show, what are they going to be thinking and looking back? And what's the time capsule of what we're creating right now for them?
It's the cycle, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like in the 70s. I think right there's during Vietnam is when it was the first time like the DOD did like I don't know, some sort of survey or something. And it was the first time a war was unfavorable. It's because journalists were allowed to go in and just show, the charred carcasses of children. And people are like, what is this? Because yeah, so what? The war starts in 1965. That's only 20 years removed. So the same 20-year gap we're talking about right now, back to Iraq
Yep.
War, you're only 20 years removed from World War II, where it's like probably the most popular war ever. Like you're going to kill the Nazis and the Japanese and go get them, and propaganda Uncle Sam and the nurse kissing the sailor in Times Square, and it's fucking great. And then you go to Korea, and that's the forgotten war. And then Vietnam, people start going like, what is this? Why are we
Right.
over there? And they're like, Gulf of Tonkin. You're like, that's not Pearl Harbor. That's weird, and they're making a lot of money off this, and you're like, I guess communism, domino theory, maybe. And then you're like, okay. And they evolve from that, and then you go Desert Storm, and everyone's kind of okay with Desert Storm because it lasts for like a couple weeks, and only I think 93 Americans died, and obviously it's bad, but it's over, it's quick, it's rah rah, we hit them. You're like, okay, awesome. And then 2001 happens, and it's like 9/11, and that's huge, and it's visceral, and it's the World Trade Center collapsing, and people jumping to their death, and you go, and no one's against going to Afghanistan. You're like, let's go fucking get them.
Yep.
And then, but then you can see that they get greedy and they take a bite of the apple, and they go, and we got to go to Iraq, and people are like, wait, what? And at first, everyone's like, wait, why are we doing this? And it's you're just bulldozing with that same sort of COVID narrative. And it's like, oh, looks like we got a communist on our hands. You hate America. And it's like a hard position. You're going, look, I understand what happened in time in lower Manhattan in the Pentagon. You're like, and that's awful. But like Iraq has nothing to do with this. And then you point to the past and you go, we had no reason being in Vietnam or Korea. And you go, we probably shouldn't do this, but it's such a hard defense because you're like, I'm not disregarding how bad 9/11 was, but you're like, let's not get swept up in this. And it's
Yeah.
people are like, even if they agree with you, they don't say it. They're like, dude, I mean, come on, it was 9/11. Like, you're like, I get that, but it's such a hard, it's like, it's like you're a lawyer, like a state provided lawyer, like defending a pedophile. You're like, I don't defend him, but we do have like a rule of law where you have to have a fair trial. And it's like, I don't know. And you're like, I'm trying to do the right thing. So with COVID, it's especially me, I mean, got fucking banned from YouTube for it. But you're like, guys, like I get it's bad and I get grandma is dying. I understand that. But like we're 10 years removed from Pfizer paying $3 billion in fines because it showed that they knew Oxycontin was addictive. 10 years, not even 50. Like it just happened. Like Twitter
Yeah,
still
I mean,
existed.
all the fines, all the fines that were
And it's
paid. And, but it does, like, if you think about it, it's a rallying, having, because people were dying, right?
it's by
People were dying.
design. You
And
have to defend an unpopular position. They're going, look at this guy. He doesn't think 9/11's bad. And you're like, no, I do think it's bad. We just shouldn't go to Iraq. So again, it's like the emails I'd get. It's like, dude, COVID's like tearing through our cities. I'm like, I know it's bad, but
right.
let's not forget the corporations who are
Uh,
being our savior are demons from hell.
Right. Well, so I go back and I will still, and it's probably why, I never was involved with any vaccine drug safety work. It was, but I'm pretty involved in, what I thought was originally just an issue with antidepressants and, the FDA and Pfizer. I thought it was just isolated, right? Like, oh, they knew about it because, like the companies, in 1991, they had hearings when it was just Prozac on the market at the FDA. All the advisory board members took money from industry, from whether it was Eli Lilly or the makers of the new antidepressants coming. And the question on the table in 1991 was the emergence of violence and suicide with Prozac. And all of the advisory board members, nope, we don't see any, nope. The FDA is like, all right, well, Eli Lilly, you study it. We're not going to follow up with you guys. Now we're going to approve, Paxil from GSK and Zoloft from Pfizer. Oh, and for kids, because that extends your patent, right? So all of this happens before, which I knew none of this. And so once we actually got warnings, I thought, oh, this just must be an isolated issue with antidepressants. Like, oh, this must have just been like something they did with this class of drugs. Then I found out, no, it's our whole system. It's the whole system in which we operate, which is, I call it now, the spider web. And it's the spider web because it's all the follow the money. It's all the ties. And I should actually show it at some point, this web that I created. And I used spider web because how like spider webs are like sticky but they're pretty, they're beautiful, and then you don't see it. They're translucent, they're
Invisible,
also,
but they're super complex and
yeah, like it's everything, right?
they're
And so in the
created by
middle,
monsters to capture
yeah,
things.
yeah. I mean, the whole thing, it's spider web is actually, I've never heard it as a spider web, and that's kind of been my new thing. But patient, doctor in the middle, and it's the entire complex that has created, that we're trapped in, that we don't even know. But once you do know, right, and you start going through it, you're like, okay, this is how I think we have to start taking it apart, or you have to understand it, where you're operating, and then you start having to get that sticky stuff off your, when you walk through a web. But it's very integral, like design, and then there's things that are super obvious and then ones that aren't. And so when I look back at my work thinking, again, antidepressants, but really, no, it's the system in which it's allowed to thrive. And it's what has been allowed to thrive. It's how we were able to get under the guise of fear and death and all of that. Like, you have these companies, I never worked on any vaccine stuff, but when all of a sudden in 2020, right before, the FDA advisory committee, and I was like, wait a minute, these are like, you're giving these companies that have paid billions of dollars complete legal immunity. Like,
Yeah.
oh, for any future harms. Like, and wait, you're letting the control group in the vaccine, you're letting the control group get for ethical reasons, because it's not fair if they might die without having the vaccine, so we got to offer it up to all the control group, the placebo group, right? My feeling on that is, like, I'm sorry, if you agree to be in a clinical trial, that's part of the deal, right? Part of the deal is you might get the treatment drug, you might not. So I saw that as a huge red flag when they're like, here you go, you take it. Well, yeah, now they have nothing to compare long term, or when like we start seeing if people are dying. And so we really, like, thank God there were people who didn't get vaxxed, right? Because that was the control group, but it was done intentionally, like intentionally to not see what was going on. And so you start watching that, and then you see and then knowing that all your media that I used to work with, that were really, like, I had relationships with, the mainstream, the CNNs, the Foxes, although Fox has gotten, at least with Tucker and some of them do a little bit more, but they just were part of the problem too. They were not actually doing what they should do, which is go in and investigate. But then, and maybe this is where, like, my eyes were kind of open of like, wait, this has always been around, Kim, and you were part of the understanding of being propaganda. Like, they've always been kind of operating and working with, whatever an agenda is. And it's always about who's got the more money with the bigger agendas, right? And what are the missions behind it? And so I don't know, it's been such an eye-opening that I really hope that there are a lot more people out there that don't say, dude, move on. Like, COVID's over. I don't want to talk about it. Even like some of my really, good friends who in the beginning told me I was like, I've been doing this work for 20 years, right? And I also do my advertising. Like, I have a lot of aspects of my life, but they were telling me I was completely wrong in my questions I was asking, completely, like as if they knew. They're like, you're completely wrong. This is like irresponsible. We're even asking the questions. I'm like, wow. So these were my friends, but then, I also think the environment that I've always worked in, the artists, the creatives, the Hollywood, the production companies, it's very much been a certain kind of belief system without even questioning the belief system, right? It just kind of inherently came along with, this is where I think in COVID, more than just medical, I hope it made people wake up to belief systems and why do I believe this? Or I've always thought, oh, I'm a good, Democrat, or I'm a good Republican. You start looking at all that, and hopefully you've done a little bit of your own work of looking in the mirror and questioning, why did I believe something? But anyways, going back to the people I know saying this now, every time, because they know I've been on this, even on the vax journey for the last 3 years. And every time I'm like, the booster, right? This, and I'm trying to give them information. They're like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm moving. Kim, I'm done. I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's almost as if they really don't want to talk about it. Like, I almost want to put my blinders on and la, 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 I'm not listening. And I don't know if that is going back to our beginning of our conversation of the different kind of paths or where you stop. Like, is that because that's where they want to stop? They don't want to see? Because I think
so.
Because anytime you actually have taken your blinders off, and I've said, once you see, you can't unsee. Like, you really can't. You have to almost go into like a
you can't.
You can't.
You
like,
actually, you truly cannot.
Literally, you can't. You can see right through it. Once the veil has been lifted and you start seeing things, I don't think you can actually pretend. I mean, I always say it. I'm like, oh my God, would I love to go back to my old life and, like go living, doing my, advertising life of productions, being on big shoots. But I can't undo what I know now. And I see it in all aspects of, my life, like even how much my industry, because advertising and drug companies, that's like one of the top advertisers for all the major media, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's not just even the messages, but it's all of the ancillary, company, not even ad agencies, but you've got the photographers, the directors, you've got
The food
hairstylists,
caterers, like
the caterers, the locations, like you have
it's
an
a
entire
it's a blank
system.
industrial complex.
Yes. And that's exactly what it is in just that piece of it that has nothing to do with all of like the safety side of things. So they don't, even if they don't like doing the work and they hate those, stupid ads and whatnot, they know it pays the bills and they got college kids
Yeah.
or kids in college.
So
You know what I mean? So we've created this like huge, that's more than just that, and why they don't want to also look deeper, because if you look deeper, that means, oh shit, that's my work, or that's been
well,
our client. And
yeah, it's like private prisons. It was like the biggest lobbying thing against legalizing marijuana in some state years and years ago. Like the number one lobbying was like Budweiser or something, and it was like, yeah, if you're gonna get fucked up, you got to use our drug. You can't use that. But like the second biggest one, I think, was the prison guard lobby. Think of how evil that is. Huh?
uh,
What? Why are
why
you
would
concerned
they?
about weed? What?
Yeah,
Huh?
exactly.
Oh,
Why are
well,
you?
I gotta put people in cages so I can. But then there is and you can stare at that and stay in the stage of nihilism and go, oh my God, there's an entire industrial complex around it, or you can take the positive outlook and go, well, these people aren't necessarily for, they're not fundamentally for locking people up. You're like, this is just some poor fuck that maybe didn't get an education and he's got to do this and he's just doing this because it pays for his kid to go to school. So you go,
Yeah.
that's not inherently evil. And you go, well, so hold on. All you have to do, it's a big all, but you have to just find a new nucleus for a blank industrial complex to arise from. So, like at the very top, there are some evil, sadistic people that just love throwing people in jail. They're demons. They suck. But then most people, it's the photographers, it's the people catering the food to the shoot for the Pfizer. Like they don't care. They're there to
They don't
sell.
care.
They're there to sell finger foods. Like,
Right.
okay, well, just, and again, it's just is a very simple just. It's, if you just fix the center thing and shift it, then most people don't actually don't actually care. They go, yeah, okay, whatever. It's, the meat packing industry. It's like, oh, it's so screwed because they're making money, and then the people canning it are making money, and the people, shipping it are making money, and the people providing the horses to bring it to the railroads are making company. You're like, oh my God, it's so evil. And then you go, not really. Everyone's just trying to get a paycheck. So you just
They're
kind
just
of,
trying to get a pay. Right.
if
Shift
you
it.
make it a little better, then all of a sudden, if if it becomes in if it becomes fashionable to, start talking about vaccine injury, and you shift the Overton window, and it's the hardest part, you got to move that thing,
Yep.
then all of a sudden it becomes popular to do it. And then to do it, you got to, well, as it becomes more popular, you get more funding and you stop filming it on a phone. And instead you buy a camera. Next thing you know, you get a photographer that goes, I'll film it for you. And then you just shift this entire industrial complex to now it's all of this money is going into, airing Senate investigations into Fauci or something. And then you
Yeah.
have some food company catering the shoot. And so it's very difficult, but it's also not difficult.
Right.
There's a
It's a good way of
couple,
looking at
yeah,
it.
there's a couple bad things at the center that you can just shift. And it's like shifting the foundational bedrock of a skyscraper. You don't want to, once it's 10 floors up and you realize it's tipping, you go, oh fuck. But if you go, all right, well, it's supposed to be a 100-story skyscraper, why don't we stop construction now, and we're gonna have to go in and we're gonna have to shift the foundation. You get the guys out there with the lasers, and they're going, now it's fixed, and then you build up from there. So it's
Right.
well, then who does it fall on to do that hard work? Well, ultimately, it is a luxury. It is a luxury to go after these deep societal issues, because when you're just trying to feed, 5 kids and your wife, you don't necessarily have time to go into the deep injustices of the meat packing industry. You're just like, did I have a job? Shut up. But
Yeah.
every once in a while, you get someone that's either A, deeply affected by it, they
Yeah.
lose someone, or they themselves are injured, or you have something like I have a podcast,
Yeah.
and
You're
I
using
am
your tool.
well, it's not only that, it's a very big luxury. I'm 32. Most of the people I grew up with who are my age are married with kids and own a house and are paying off debts. I'm not married. I don't have an ex-wife. I don't have kids. I don't
Right.
have a girlfriend. I don't have pets. I don't have debts. It's me in an apartment doing a podcast. I have the luxury to go, I'm gonna dig into this. And
Yep.
it's not some noble thing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, it does fall on people with, you can either become like an actor millionaire who's so detached that you're like, I'm just concerned about the polar bears. And you're like, hey, Leonardo DiCaprio, like, go for it. You have the luxury to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's just I personally don't give a shit. But hey, more
Right.
power to you. You can do this. And if there is a groundswell for people that actually want to hear about it, those are the videos that will get views. And kind of like an industrial complex,
It'll shift.
all of the views the most viewed videos I do. I mean, I've done 1,192 episodes. The top 10 videos are responsible for more than 90% of all views. They are all about COVID and COVID scandals.
That says something. Because you know what I think
Okay, so
people do?
what am I going to
So
do? I'm going to
you're
do
gonna
these videos.
do
As a
right.
businessman, I'm going to go, I love the
100%.
podcast. I love talking to people. I love doing funny episodes. And sometimes I love talking about the Cold War. But when it comes down to Tommy's podcast is a business that needs to pay my rent and buy my groceries, yeah, I'm going to go get in touch with Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone and do an episode about the latest whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I think but you're being realistic. And then there's somebody like people like me who it was personal, right?
And then that's the other side.
Then once it's
It's a
personal,
vendetta.
yeah, it's like, no, and then I become, although, it's interesting, I've reconnected with a lot of the people that I was involved in getting black box warnings on. And a lot of them, after we did that and got that accomplished, a lot of people just went back to their life. And I do think when you just said luxury, if I had little kids when Woody died, I couldn't have done this.
No.
I couldn't have done this if I didn't have like life insurance that took care of like our house, and I had to go work all the time, and I had to move from my house. Like, I had luxury in a horrible place, right? So I was able to say, if I had kids, like, I had other friends that
You just
did
have
have
to keep
kids.
going. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to get on a plane almost every couple of weeks. I had companies that allowed me to do it. They gave me, time off. But, I look at people now who haven't been doing this work, but are super interested because they remember the connection of what brings us together as people. And I think it's the stories, right? And even also the people taking on I just did this really awesome podcast of taking on the big guy.
Everyone always also just loves that. Yeah, everyone loves that.
Like that, taking on the big guy,
Yeah,
right?
that archetype. Everyone loves that.
Yes,
Just everyone likes the underdog.
the underdog. And it was a really interesting. So I feel like we have to tap into those. And at some point, maybe if, I still have this vision and I keep telling all my vax injured, because I'm not vax injured. It's not my, it's not my thing. I stand with them and I want to help them because I have the gifts of, 20 years of what it was like, where we did force FDA to do the warnings and the hearings. We did get the House Energy and Commerce to do investigations. We did. I mean, we were relentless, and we were relentless showing up. And so I want to be there and do my part, because I always say that, you know, I'm not the one injured, and I've done everything I can to keep my body healthy, because I know that how valuable that is. And, you know, I think people, like, if one of those, I keep saying, if one of Hollywood, and it's my vision, I don't know, you're probably too young, Tommy, but they did that whole AIDS, We Are the World, and they did, you know, they had all the different musicians, they wrote a song, and it was for AIDS, and they all came together, and it was this big, you know, not only concert, but it became a big fundraising tool, and they raised hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Imagine the people who have the influences could actually, and the luxury, as you say, because that is a really good point, could do something like that. If all it takes is one of those type people who maybe that brings on one buddy, and then they start connecting it, and it becomes this big movement. And I guarantee you then when it becomes a movement, you've shifted that nucleus, and now you've created a new kind of place where people are going to focus their you know, their businesses. And of course, they're always going to be the business of, you know, doing pharmaceutical until you get that taken off the air. Once that gets taken off the air, if you were able to get drug ads from a congressional standpoint, illegal, kind of like, you know, big tobacco, once that happens, well, then that forces it naturally to create whatever is the next industry that's gonna, you know, for using the advertising production.
It's both. It's the luxury and the vendetta. Like, you can't just, and then there's like, mine's not like a vendetta. I lost a sibling to suicide in 2014. And like everyone in my family like had to keep going about life, and it sucks, but you just have to keep going about life. And so did I, and it kind of destroyed me. But now I have the podcast, and it's been almost a decade. And I can also, those aren't the ones that get the most views, but I can bring on like mental health experts and talk about, you know, groups that do, you know, nonprofit, you know, whatever, veteran outreach. And I can do those luxury things again because I can. And those ones don't get the most views, but they have importance to me. And then it's like, I've always said this, like, I personally I don't give a shit about COVID. I mean, very selfishly, I'm 32. I'm in good shape. Like, yeah, whatever. I'm fine. I'm good.
Yep.
To me, I kept doing it. It started as just like, I guess I don't know, the arrogant, hard-headed Irish in me. That's, you know, YouTube is like, you can't talk about that. And I was like, fuck you. I'm going to talk about it. Like, do whatever it's your mom tells you clean your room. And you're like, I will not clean my room. It's good.
Right.
Because
I know who you were as a kid.
Yeah, it's just don't look deeper than that. It's I'm a male with testosterone. Do this. No, fuck you. That's simple. It starts as that, but then it also starts as like, I'm trying to build this podcast, and you know, I do an episode about this, and it gets okay, cool. I literally interview the guy that's in charge of all the rovers that goes to Mars, Dr. Robert Manning, or I interview a man who has walked on the moon, Charlie Duke, and I get like 100 views. And then I have on Dr. McCullough, who talks about bears, and it gets 100,000 views. And you go, whether or not I care about COVID, you're going, I have to get views and subscribers to grow the show. And as it gets more views and subscribers, I can start doing little luxury things like, oh, I want to talk about suicide awareness or something. And those don't bring in things, but those are my luxury things that I'm allowed to talk about, or just get bigger guests. Hey, look, I have this many subscribers, and guests are willing to come on because they're like, okay, now I have access to that audience. What's the core engine though? What's like the meat and potatoes? It's like, yeah, I'm doing the COVID thing. Why do you keep doing COVID? Because that's what's paying for everything. Well, why is everyone looking at that? I don't know. There's a swell for it, and it's people that don't have time for it. They're going to work, but they're going, I am interested in it. I am passionate about it, but I just have to go to work and feed my kids. But if you're going to do a podcast about it that I can just turn on my 20-minute drive to work, and I don't have to do, you can just listen to it. You don't have to set up the camera and contact Dr. McCullough and do the whole thing. You can just flip it on and listen to it and then turn it off. Well, I'm now sharing that luxury with people. And then you just get back to free market dynamics. Well, why do you keep doing COVID episodes? Because they keep outperforming other episodes by 10, 20,000%. And it's like,
Yeah.
which just means most people want to hear about it. So
Right. Right.
there's
Do you think when you just said, because one of my other hot buttons that I'm going to be pushing and working on, and I've been it's been really like every time there's another mass shooting, I'm like, okay, enough until we get to the bottom of this. Yeah. I go back to 91, it was emergent. I look at the documents that came out from the lawsuit that has shown it. We have been saying you have to, just the same with, I see so many parallels even with COVID where there's a death. Okay, if there's a death or there's an autopsy, why aren't you you could get to the bottom of this. The same thing with every one of the shootings now. I don't care, like, I'm sorry, if you've gone and you've done something, HIPAA doesn't apply to you anymore. I want to know your records. I want your records. The public deserves your records. And also you don't tell me you haven't done a toxicology report. You know exactly what is going on. So we've got the same thing that's happening and we keep going after. I'm not saying it's an either or, guns or not, right? It's not a guns or, and I say it's both and. We have to go upstream. So that is my other one, that at some point, Tommy, it would be great to get the right people and start, because even my vets that I'm working with, big vet organizations, like because they've been some of the most heavily medicated or given meds when they come back. And they're like, something is not working here either. And I keep going, we got to go upstream. We've known this. I even think about, like, I got on a plane with my lawyers and went down to Parkland, Florida, and met with those families. And I'm like, you guys, why did Pfizer create a Zoloft prosecutor manual? Why did they say this? I'm just telling you what's going on. They knew about it in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm just a regular person that just happened to get these out. But we got to ask these questions, and we need to get people the same kind of movement that we've had with COVID that has been pushing, like the McCulloughs, the Malones that are like, let's get into, we need to have autopsies. We need to have this. We need that now for another huge societal problem that we have, which is all of the shootings, because we're going to just keep having them and everybody's going to go, I don't know, let's just keep walking down that same street. It's like, what is the point of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over until you're like, no, we got to go. And again, not causation, but we got to go and apply the same kind of standards of curiosity and pushing and getting people and getting Congress to do their job, getting the FDA, the middle, it's the behavioral health groups that are also part of the industry, the complex. So anyways, that's
what was today's episode was going to be. I had actually labeled the episode psychiatric drugs. And of course we immediately just ran all over the place, which I figured would happen anyway. But I think I'll text you after this. We'll schedule another episode to dive into it, because even me, like there's also, and then there's the luxury, there's the vendetta, and then there's also just the kind of, it's much smaller. And I think it's a subcategory of luxury, but it's the I don't give a shit factor. And it's like, I've already been banned from so many platforms and lost so many friends for people that are just rabid. How dare you question Fauci? And there's just always that part of me that's just kind of like, when like my brothers would pick on me or something, or I'd pick on my brother, and he's freaking out and he's crying, and Your mom would say like, he's doing it because he's getting a rise out of you, and then dad would have a different response. He'd be like, punch him in the face. But my mom would just be like, just stop giving him the reaction he wants. I am 1,000% on board to just start talking to experts about psychiatric drugs and school shootings, simply because I know how uncomfortable that will make people.
Mhm.
I am 1,000% on board to do that, sheerly out of just kind of like, I don't know. I kind of want to see what happens.
You know
It's
what? I
it's like a
actually,
cat knocking over a vase. I kind of just want to see what happens.
yeah, and you know what? I can tell you right now, I have the people. I can start
Oh,
bringing
let's
the
do it.
people. Let's get this conversation is so over needed.
Yeah.
And I'm like every single time, and people are like, and I see, everybody's putting the memes like, God, I'm like, okay, yes,
Yeah,
done,
I'm
sure.
I'm
Like
down to
I'm
I'm
totally fine. But
I'm down
that's
to
not
poke this
it.
bear. I'm down
But
to poke
that's
it.
not, yeah, like let's poke. And we've been saying this for a long time. And even getting like, why you guys, come on, Congress, you did it for us with suicide, you can do it here. And
Yeah.
I'll leave you with like this story. So got asked, somebody contacted me from a school district. They've had all of it was an administrator, and they've had a bunch of suicides in
Hmm.
their school in the last year. And they're like, hey, can you ever come up and speak to our community? Absolutely. And they were going to get some funding to travel me there. So they went to who they thought would be good funders, or to help, sponsor me to bring me to their community. And it was like a suicide prevention organization. And they came back and said, no, our missions aren't aligned. And also, I'm like, you know why? It's because the behavioral health, if you go look at follow the money, go look at the state governments, look at the federal governments, they're all putting money in these suicide prevention. And what are they doing? And what they don't want, it's the drugs, like you can't mention, like I go, of course we're in the same business. Like we're both in the business of wanting to stop suicides or violence. But there's all these different elements. Sure, you guys are making the assumption it's always mental health, mental illness,
Yeah.
depression, but there's a whole other thing that you guys are not looking at, and that's the psychosis that comes from it, the hypnosis. Like, look at that woman who just took her 3 kids out in for postpartum depression, and she just murdered her kids out in and they were little, like a
Yeah.
baby. I think they were all under 4 or 5 years old.
Jesus.
And she started having postpartum depression in like October, went to her doctor, and she took the lives of the kids with like bands, exercise bands, when her husband, and they kept going back and telling their doctors, my wife feels like a zombie. And they had her on a course of 13, not all at the same time, 13 different psychiatric medicines starting in October. She took the lives of the kids, and she was a nurse. And the husband, and so I have people that absolutely, let's just have the tough conversation, the uncomfortable truth, the inconvenient truth.
I'm down for. I don't.
Like, I mean, Tommy, you've already done it with the COVID
Yeah.
stuff. So you would be,
What do I care? What I
and
mean,
you have like, yeah, like this is the conversation that we need to have, that as society we need to have, and not be afraid to have. It doesn't mean that you're on it, but when I saw that 1 out of 6, and they're starting to do big things over in like the UK and exposing this again. But if there are that many people are afraid, like, oh, whoa, like you could see the same thing with the vax. Like, you don't want to talk about injuries because I had I had the vax, so I don't want to hear about the injuries, or I take those meds. Well, no, that's not what we're saying. It's not a either or. And as a society, we need to stop with the either or.
well,
How about
it's
both and?
yeah, it's both and it's like we need it.
Both and.
September 12th, 2001. It's like we probably need to reevaluate the process of getting on planes. I don't like that though. I take planes for business. We're not getting rid of planes. I'm just saying a couple guys with box cutters took down $1 trillion defense network. Let's just reevaluate it. Hey, throw up some metal detectors and you go, there, it's good. Right.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
there's again, it's back to the jungle. Yeah, we now know what the process is. It's going to be it's a moment of shock, followed by a
Mm-hmm.
lot of discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
and then peace. So to me,
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, let's do it. There's that moment of shock, like, oh fuck, what if these antidepressants are actually causing this? And then you go, okay. And then there's that moment of anxiety of like, oh wow, everyone's gonna hate me. Alex Jones just got sued for $1 billion for talking about school. Well, he said they didn't happen. They're harassing people, but they're gonna try to link it all up, just like they linked
Yeah.
9/11 and WMDs and COVID and grandma. They're gonna go, oh, you're a school shooter tonight. You're gonna go, no, I just want to maybe let's look into this, and then yeah, and then ultimately, then there's just the business side. If I start doing
Yeah.
these episodes and I'm like, these are outperforming everything, well, then you have the whole free market thing where I go, I'm gonna just if hey, I'll stop doing them when people stop listening to them. You know,
Yeah.
there's
And it's going to be there. I'm telling you, Tommy, I see it so clearly with what we've seen with COVID. And especially because now I feel like this is actually more aligned, more so than getting the warnings on suicide. But even back then, everybody was like, oh no, people like, I remember so many people saying that Kim is crazy. She's like just a crazy widow looking for an excuse. I'm like, no, but I had to deal with all that stuff, right? But with these going on with with the link and just like asking the question, it's just start with a question,
yeah.
a very uncomfortable question. And you're gonna, I mean, it's gonna make people very uncomfortable. They don't want to hear it. But guess what? We are all sitting ducks if we're not curious.
Well, and
We're all
again,
like,
it's again, it's the free market thing. If they get views and downloads, you'll go, people want to hear about it.
yeah,
That
yep,
simple. And then you could say, well, if the story is that, if the powers that be don't want that story told, they'll make sure it doesn't get views. And okay, no, but they just played that card with COVID and they did censorship and shadow banning. There's now an entire parallel infrastructure in response to top-down COVID censorship. Rumble, CloudHub, Brighteon, BitChute, Odyssey, Elon buying Twitter. And then you have on then you just have social. Those were all video platforms. CloudHub, Brighteon, BitChute, Odyssey. And Rumble, of course, the biggest of them all, Rumble. Okay. And locals. And then you have the social media side. Then you have Elon bought Twitter, but even without that, you have Getter, Gab, Free Space, Truth, I don't know, a couple of others that I use. They're all there. And so it's now even easier than before because like the whole top down COVID, like no one even knew what to do. When I was like, all right, let's ask the tough questions about the COVID vaccine. It's like to compound the tough question, hey, we're just gonna straight up censor you. I mean, imagine 2 years
right,
ago going, you're off YouTube and Twitter. You go, oh, well, I'm just
screwed.
now in the desert. There's nothing else.
Yep,
But now if someone goes, you're off Twitter, you go, yeah, fucking what else is new? Like,
yep,
oh, you're off YouTube. You're like, cool, dude. I don't care.
right,
You're like,
right.
I'm fine. So now it's like there's an entire parallel thing where you go, yeah, let's throw out the question. And we might do the episode, and it's not that it's received well or bad. It's just people aren't that interested. And you go, oh, maybe there's not a whole lot here. But
Yep.
or you put it out there and it gets a lot of views and it gets a lot of hate comments, and you go, oh, we hit a nerve. And
Yeah, we hit.
there you go. It's that simple. So it's yeah, I'm down for it. I'm 1,000% down for it. I'll text you right after this and we'll schedule another one and talk.
Yeah, I just feel like it's the conversation, again, I keep saying for those who are like afraid to hear it, it's not saying it's the reason. And we're not saying
Just
you do
asking a
this and not do
question.
that. I'm just asking a question. We
Yeah.
need to go. You can't, how can you like, even when I think about all the vax and the sudden deaths, if you don't ask the question or like how do you know they're not related, or how do you know they are related? But you don't know unless you go and look. But you can't just say it, nope, they're not related, like what's
Well,
happening now, like nope, we're
well,
shutting that conversation down.
well,
They're not, no.
those are the people in stage one who want to unsee, but they can't unsee. You have a lot of people, and those are the people that watch the episodes. They're the ones who are in stage two of anxiety and research, and they want to reach stage three of
Yep.
resolution. So it's already kind of built in of like, do the interviews. You have a lot of people who are in their own personal struggle of like, I want to get to the bottom of this. Like, there's a reason why 120 years later, I picked up The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. There's a reason why. I mean, the book was written in a time 15 years before World War I broke out, and we're talking about it on a podcast being streamed to people's iPhones. Like,
Right.
there's clearly an interest in it still. There's a reason why people are still publishing books about JFK. You can't hate people for going, everyone wants to read about it. I don't know what to fucking tell you. It's the thing. It's whatever. So
Right.
yeah, I'm 1,000% on board to do it. I don't care. I'll ask a question. I don't, do I care?
And I'll put some people together
Yeah.
because I've been working on, I mean, the people who've been in this space have known about it for a long time. Violence, suicide is violence against yourself, but and and then homicide and all that is violence against others. So
Yeah.
and knowing what it did to a very, like, going back to how it all started with Woody, who had no history of depression, no history of mental health issues, just got put on Zoloft for insomnia, and 5 weeks later hung himself
Yeah.
when he was out running. Like, it's insane that that actually even happened. And I even go back to the day before, or the Sunday before he died, and he was telling me that he was having nightmares that scared him, but he was afraid to tell me what they were. And that to me actually is all related. I always wonder, what were the nightmares? What were the things that were scaring him? Because he always joked that he never, like, dreamed. And so the fact that he actually said that he was having nightmares that scared him should have been a red flag to me. But I, of course, why would I ever think anything of it? Because, there wasn't any reason I would ever, question. But I also have somebody who I have worked with from Canada. He actually took his kid. I mean, he killed his kid. He had just started Paxil, and he actually went through through the trial, and he didn't get charged, and he's a free man. And he talks about what was going on in his head. And it's a very powerful, powerful story. And it's also, like, gut wrenching, because that guy lives with living hell every single day. But he can also explain something that I have no idea, because he lived it.
Yeah,
and
he was
still,
subjectively there.
yeah, and he's here. And so, I have, and then experts too that have been doing this. So we can make some fun
Absolutely.
nightmare.
I'm 1,000% on board. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Again, like with the whole COVID thing, and I think most people don't know, and I always try to remind them, it all was an accident. I interviewed a doctor because it was a friend of someone that I had on before. They just knew I was trying to grab. It was like I was I was like a year into podcasting, and I was still doing what I do now, where I'm pretty much just like, it's very unlikely I'll ever turn down a guest. They're like, hey, do you want to interview? I'm like, throw them on. Yeah. It was Dr. Roger Hodkinson, and it was April 2021. It was a woman I had on, a lawyer, Bobby Ann Cox, and we were talking about 2020 election, discrepancies. She said, hey, do you want to talk to this guy? He's talking about the COVID vax. I was like, yeah, sure. Like, what do I care? Throw him on. It's just another guest for me. And then that's when I got my first strike from YouTube. And I was like, what is that? And that is just, and then the rest is history. So to me, it's also just kind of started with, like, curiosity of, like, in a year from now, it might be like, did you ever plan on becoming known as, like, the SSRI school shooting podcast? I'd be like, absolutely fucking not. I just want to talk about aliens, but here we are. So, like, ultimately it isn't even me. I'm just a vessel for what the people want to watch.
Yep.
Really, it's just that. I'm just a barometer for, I don't care. I'm just throwing it up there.
Yeah,
what do I care?
Which is actually a good, and it's a conversation that needs, whether people are ready to hear it or not. Like you said, the numbers will show, but it's a conversation that, that's all it is. And it starts every single thing, I think, in life for any of us. It starts with curiosity.
Well, it's kind of like a can of Coca-Cola or like a Big Mac. And you're like, it's so wild that's still just, that was like the thing in 1990 and it's the thing now. And it's like, well, if billions of people stopped buying it every day, then it wouldn't be a thing anymore. It's just, those are just corporations that are just handing what people want. And it's like, it's not some top-down control thing. You will eat the Big Mac. It's tasty.
Right.
And as so long as it's tasty, it's going to be available for $3. Like, it's just what it is. So yeah, I have no personal investment in it. And I'm very open about it. Ultimately, like, I'm running a business and I'm trying to make money so I can do other luxury things like mental health. Like, I don't care. I
Yeah.
don't. And then of course there's the whole like kind of. I also just like let's poke it. If people get
Hmm.
angry, I'm like that's kind of funny to me. So I'm gonna keep poking that. Like
Yeah.
I will never not wear occasionally my NASA shirt because I know there's a subset of people who just freak out and start commenting the Earth is flat and space isn't real. That's funny to me. I will never not do
Uh,
that.
oh my God. And I'm thinking, why does anybody like who? It kind of reminds me of the people in when I would have, we were doing, it's going to be totally tangent, but we were doing a commercial for Timex Iron Man watch.
Yeah.
And it was and it was a still photography, photo image that we had to have like, where's the transition, be
Yeah.
coming out of the water and getting on your bike. Well, apparently the stylist we hired did not have the right gloves that we put on, whatever gloves you would put on when you come onto the bike, coming out of the water, just whatever. And people actually wrote to the company
I just lost their mind.
and said, you did not use,
Those
those are
aren't
not
biking gloves.
Those are not biking gloves. And I'm like, and I mean, I definitely learned a lesson. You always like, you better like, because there are people who are the ones that see a NASA t-shirt and say,
They
like
just
what,
lose their
yeah,
mind.
you're losing. Yeah. And same thing here. I'm like, who has time that it's going to go, well, I'm going to write to that company, but there are people. And
Well,
so I kind of find that funny too.
no, it's
I'm like,
hilarious. And then you find that as a
wow.
business model, and you go, those people are still clicking on the video. You go, well, I'm going to do that on purpose.
Yeah. So,
Which is why, like, I'm 32. I have a biology degree. I've shot a gun a handful of times in my life. When I want to talk about like war, I don't do anything. I just bring on like a Navy SEAL or a Delta Force operator because I'm like, I don't need the people email me. You don't fucking know. So I'll bring someone on and be like, you take it away. I'm not gonna say
yeah.
anything. But yeah, no, yeah, I'm on board just kind of because I also just get a kick from it. I get a kick from
Yeah.
people freaking out. Like that's funny. That's funny to me.
Yep.
But Kim, let's wrap
Awesome.
this one up. I'll text
Great.
you. I'll text you right now. Um, and we'll set up another episode. And yeah, let's start doing those interviews. I'm 1,000%
Yeah.
on board for that.
I think it'd be really, it's a conversation that needs to be had. So,
Hell yeah. And then I think it
and
should.
you're willing to have it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but again, I don't. Everyone that hates me is gonna hate me, and they probably have already told me that, so I don't really care. Yeah. So in the description is still your website and your Twitter if you guys want to go follow her, and yeah, I'll literally text you in like 30 seconds, and let's schedule the next one.
Great.
All right.
As always, Tommy, super fun.
Hell yeah, it's absolutely a blast. And if you get any takeaway from this, go listen to The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. It's great. I mean, if you want to take one nugget away, it's a good book. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, whatever. But Kim, thank you
I
so
wish,
much. Till next time.
till
Thank you for
next
watching,
time.
everyone.